Hello, friends. This is Chandrakant from Agul Mac, and welcome to the Legal Matters. And today is Sunday, and all of us are glued to the screen nowadays and watching the news also most of the time. And we are hearing so many court cases being filed between politicians, and we keep hearing these words very often in the news, that is cognizable and non-cognizable offenses. So one guy filing a defamation suit and it is cognizable, and sometimes it is non-cognizable. So these are very technical terms. To understand in depth what is the meaning, what is the difference between cognizable and non-cognizable offenses, let me invite my friend from Ahmedabad, Mr. Jeet Bhatt.
Hello, Chandrakant. Thank you for having me on this show. And yes, as you said, today's topic, these are legal jargons, as we call it, and are, of course, not just complicated, but also difficult to understand for layman. And therefore, today I'm going to speak about this topic about cognizable and non-cognizable offenses, and also how the offenses under the Indian Penal Code are classified into being cognizable, non-cognizable, bailable, non-bailable, and compoundable and non-compoundable offenses. So these are the three criteria under which the offenses in the Indian Penal Code are classified. An offense is either compoundable, non-compoundable, cognizable, non-cognizable, and bailable or non-bailable. So this classification, which is provided under the Indian Penal Code, is based on the gravity of the offense. So if an offense is of a serious nature, like rape, murder, dacoity, robbery, then these sort of offenses are considered as cognizable, non-bailable, and non-compoundable. So what is the difference? I will explain. And whereas similarly, if the offense is the gravity of the offense is not so grave and it is not a very serious offense, like say cheating or forgery or say defamation, then these sort of offenses are non-cognizable, bailable, and compoundable. So the difference between a cognizable and a non-cognizable case is that in a cognizable offense, the police has the power to arrest the accused without the warrant of the court. And whereas in a non-cognizable offense, the police cannot arrest without the warrant from a court. So this is the basic difference between these two categories of offenses. A cognizable offense is always a serious offense, whereas a non-cognizable offense is not a serious offense, and where the maximum punishment is 3 years or less than 3 years. So another classification which the Indian Penal Code prescribes is that an offense which has a punishment of higher than 3 years would be a cognizable offense and would be non-bailable. Whereas if the punishment is maximum 3 years or less, then such offenses which are the gravity is less would be non-cognizable and bailable. So non-cognizable meaning that the police itself cannot register an FIR. It will have to send the complainant to the court, and only after taking permission from court, the police will be in a position to investigate, and thereafter, after the arrest warrant, they can arrest. Label. So the accused person will not have to go to court in order to approach request for either anticipatory bail or bail, because the police itself at the police station would be able to grant bail to the accused person. So the arrest would not be imminent, and arrest would not take place in a non-cognizable and bailable offense. So this is the first difference. Whereas in a cognizable and non-bailable offense, cognizable in the sense that the police will have the authority to register the FIR without sending the complainant to the concerned metropolitan magistrate or a concerned magistrate, a judicial magistrate first class, and the police can itself start the investigation immediately upon the receipt of the information of a cognizable offense. So the police has the power to investigate a cognizable offense from the moment when the police gets the information that an offense, which is in the nature of a cognizable offense, is committed. So any person who sees, witnesses, or is a victim of any offense brings to the notice of the police officer the commission of a cognizable offense, the police will immediately first register in its diary and thereafter issue a first information report, which is known as the FIR, which is also considered to be the starting point of the criminal investigating agency. The machinery of the criminal, the machinery sets into motion after the registration of FIR. So that is the starting point. The FIR, basically, you have to inform either a victim or any person who has seen the commission of a cognizable offense has to inform the concerned police station that this is what has happened. And if it is a cognizable offense where punishment is more than 3 years and the code itself prescribes that it is a cognizable offense, then the police officer will immediately register an FIR, put an entry into his police diary, and immediately start the investigation. So, in a cognizable offense, the police has much the power to investigate according to the Code of Criminal Procedure. So, it can carry out all the process of investigation after the registration of FIR. So, this is the basic difference between a cognizable and non-cognizable offense. Whereas bailable and non-bailable also, as I said, that it depends on the gravity. If the offense that is committed, which the Indian Penal Code prescribes a punishment of 3 years or less than 3 years, it will be a bailable offense. So, in case if the offense is registered and the accused person is called to the police station, the police officer himself has the power to grant him bail. So, he will not have to approach the concerned court, and the court will, the police officer itself will grant him bail. So, this is the difference between a bailable and a non-bailable offense. Whereas in a non-bailable offense, the police has power to arrest the accused, and once arrested, the police officer can keep him in his police custody only for 24 hours. So within that 24 hours, the police officer will have to seek the permission from the concerned magistrate having jurisdiction over the police station where he is performing his functions. And the magistrate will thereafter decide whether the accused person has to be kept in police custody or judicial custody. So police custody is what is known as remand, and which we hear in newspapers and cases several times, that police is seeking remand. So remand basically is a police custody. It is the extension of custody beyond 24 hours, because our constitution itself provides the protection under Article 20 Clause 2 that the person cannot be kept in police custody for more than 24 hours. He has to be produced before the magistrate concerned within 24 hours. So once the police produces him before the magistrate, the police can seek for police custody, that is known as remand. And if the court thinks fit upon application of its mind and the reasons which the police are seeking his remand for, and if the court finds that there is a ground for granting police custody, that is remand, then the court will grant 4 days, 5 days, depending, but that cannot exceed 15 days of remand. So again, there is a protection given to the accused person, and this is necessary because under the police custody, the police would usually, and we are aware that uses certain degrees of torture upon the accused person, and therefore to avoid it, because under such coercion, under such police pressure, several times accused persons are compelled to give their confession, and therefore to avoid such circumstances and to avoid the accused person himself to be a witness in his, because what the police does is using force and using third degree methods, they extract information out of him. But that is not permissible under the constitution, because the constitution also guarantees that an accused person cannot be compelled to be a witness in his own case. So even if suppose I have committed an offense, the police cannot force me to give out information, and I have a right to remain silent because of this provision, that I cannot be compelled to be a witness in my own case. And this is a very important constitutional guarantee provided under the fundamental right, and it is the right of every citizen to remain silent when questioned by the police authorities. So, therefore, these are important constitutional rights. And in a cognizable and non-bailable offense, the police cannot use any type of force or any type of pressure on the accused person. The police has to independently investigate, because police has all the power and mechanism under the Code of Criminal Procedure, which it can use and gather the information. It can go to the spot. It can take all help of forensic experts available. It can send the details to the FSL laboratories and get all informations which it can through legal source and legal method. But illegally, it cannot compel any person to be a witness in his own case. So that is remand, that is police custody. And if the police custody is denied, then the accused person will be sent to judicial custody. And the judicial custody is what we known as the central jails. So where in central jail, the accused persons are kept. Either they would be under trial, because till the trial is pending, they would be known as under trial, and they would be kept in the central jails in different barracks. So then the investigation has to be completed if the person is under custody within the period of 60 days or 90 days, depending upon the offense that is registered against him. Mostly in offenses where punishment is less than 7 years, the time period for completing the investigation is 60 days. And where the punishment is more than 10 years up to life imprisonment, the time period for investigation to be completed is 90 days. If and only if the accused person is in custody. And also there is a provision that if the investigation is not completed within this 60 or 90 days, depending on the offense which is registered against him, then the accused person is entitled to default bail. The accused person, upon making an application, will have to be released on bail if the investigation is not completed within 60 or 90 days. So this is a mandatory provision which gives again protection to the accused. That is, the police officers are taking longer period than required in completing the investigation, then the accused is entitled to default bail. So without going into the merits, without going into what offense it is, without going into the gravity and the nature of allegation against him, the accused is entitled under the law to be granted bail if the investigation is not completed within 60 or 90 days, depending on the offense registered against him. So this is again the question of remand and the question of bail. But if the court, concerned court, upon production of the accused to the magistrate, rejects his remand application and sends him to judicial custody, the accused person also has the right to approach the higher court for granting regular bail. And the sessions court, as well as the high court, and also he can approach up to the Supreme Court for grant of bail, and that matter can be decided by the higher courts. So the third is, after bailable, non-bailable comes compoundable and non-compoundable offenses. So the difference between compoundable and non-compoundable offense is that a compoundable offense can be settled with the victim or the complainant, and the court can compound the offense and release the accused person. Whereas in a non-compoundable case, which is of very serious nature, because the prosecution is always led by the state, because the state has a role in ensuring not just that a proper and fair investigation is done, but also the truth comes out in the matter. And if the offense is of a serious offense, then the offense is against the society. An accused person who is accused of a charge like murder or rape should not be permitted to settle the dispute outside the court with the complainant by giving some amount of compensation, and the accused person cannot be set free. So in serious offenses, the offenses are non-compoundable, which cannot be settled outside the court with the complainant or the victim. But in not so serious offenses, like say forgery or cheating or breach of trust, if it is between private parties and if it's a sort of a private dispute, then even if it is settled, then the court can compound the offense and release the accused from further trial and from punishment. But otherwise, serious offenses cannot be compounded. They are non-compoundable. and the entire trial has to take place, and ultimately the court will decide whether he is guilty or innocent. So these are the three criteria or categories under which the offenses are classified. It is cognizable, non-cognizable, compoundable, non-compoundable, and bailable and non-bailable. So this is just a brief overview of these provisions, and I hope I've clarified and it was easy to understand for your viewers.
Absolutely, I think it was very crystal clear, and you have given a lot of details, and you have given examples, and you have given the procedures, and the flow of how things happen in the court. But one question that is coming to my mind, and that is. In fact, you have explained that who has the authority and all that, but many times it can be manipulated in the court, where a simple offense can be manipulated to become a non-cognizable offense. So, is there a possibility of such an occurrence where a simple offense like cheating can be a non-cognizable offense?
So well, it happens several times that the police don't conduct a fair and impartial investigation, because the role of police is not just to ensure that evidence is collected against one X person, Y person, or Z person, but the role of police is to do a fair and impartial investigation so that the truth may come out. So, for example, if I may give you that in a case of suicide by wife, suppose if the wife uh, uh, the wife commits suicide after marriage within say couple of years, and the allegation of the in-laws or of the wife's parent is that there was a trauma given to the wife by the husband and his in-laws, her in-laws. So then the police has to also see, not just gather evidence against the husband and the in-laws, but also to see that what was the mental frame of mind of the accused, what circumstances that led her to commit suicide, whether she was suffering from any mental illness, like was she under depression or was there any suicidal tendencies, and whether she was taking proper advice from the doctor, whether she was under medication or not. And if ultimately, if it is found that she was depressed, she was having suicidal tendencies, then the police officer also has to bring out those during his investigation and to give his opinion that whether circumstances existed that the husband and in-laws tortured the wife to such an extent that she took her life, because otherwise it would not be abatement to suicide, an offense which is of a serious nature, if the wife herself was having suicidal tendencies or was under medication for depression. Because then the reason is not that the husbands have or the husband or in-laws have committed such amount of torture against the wife, but it is her mental uh, problem herself which led her to commit suicide. So therefore, proper investigation, a fair investigation, is absolutely crucial and important, because otherwise it can lead to travesty of justice. And as a old maxim under the common law, which says that 99 accused person should go scot-free, but not a one single innocent person should be convicted of an offense. And this holds absolutely true in a democratic setup, because these principles are of the highest principles which the state has to maintain and follow. Because one innocent person suffering, it leads to travesty of justice. So this should absolutely be avoided in all circumstances. But this happens many times. Experience says that the police, if they are not able to catch hold of the correct accused, they catch hold of any person and then frame him of serious offenses. So certainly it happens that police also sometimes do not conduct proper investigation or frame certain persons who are not actually involved in the commission of the crime.
So, in such a event, if somebody is framed wrongly in a cognizable offense, what are the remedies? If you can share very briefly, not in too much detail, but if briefly, if you can say that, for example, you can do this thing in court, etc., etc. So, very briefly, if you can tell the viewers.
So first, he has a right to approach. If he is arrested, he has the right to approach to the concerned court for bail. If he has not been arrested, he can approach for anticipatory bail. And second, the third option which is available to him is for filing of a quashing petition before the High Court. If the investigating agency has wrongly framed him, or if there is an abuse of the process, if the criminal machinery is put to use in an offense which is not actually a criminal offense but is a civil wrong. So, say in a property dispute, if false FIRs are registered and the criminal investigating agency is set into motion, then the accused persons can approach the High Court under Section 482 of the Criminal Procedure Code in order to quash the investigation and the further process. But ultimately, if quashing also doesn't work and or if quashing is not allowed, then he has to face the trial, and ultimately he has to get acquitted after undergoing the entire process. So that is, then it's a cumbersome process.
Well, that is the fear of most of the people, because when you're framing charges, and a simple thing like cognizable, non-cognizable may lead to dire consequences for a person, for the accused. He may not be the right accused, but then he will go through the trauma. So, is there something that lawyers can do to help him?
So once if he's acquitted and if it comes to the knowledge that the wrong prosecution was initiated, then he can also file a complaint for initiation of wrongful prosecution against him. So that is also an offense under the Indian Penal Code, and that he can invoke. And also, if the court finds out that wrong evidence was filed, or if a completely false investigation and wrong procedure and wrong affidavits were given before the court, giving false evidence, then the court itself can also initiate proceedings for giving false evidence before the court.
Jeet, I think thanks for clarifying these basic stuff. But many times even the people don't understand some basic stuff how the legal system works. And we have been hearing these words like cognizable, non-cognizable in the news, and it was great learning from you about these starting points of our legal system, where people can get some knowledge from our program, and make use of it in whichever way they want to. But I think this is just to clarify the doubts of some of the people about what are the different types of offenses and how they are classified. So thank you so much for coming to our show and clarifying these doubts.
Thank you for having me, Chandrakant. It's my pleasure.